Gatekeeper, open the portals between the gods and mortals. Power freely flows as our magic grows.
Before we get the show started, I would like to apologize for the sound quality of this episode. It seems like we were having some technical difficulties when Arin and Spider were recording, but fear not, our next episodes will be okay. So sit back and enjoy this episode of Part the Mist.
Hi, I'm Arin, and you're listening to Part the Mist podcast, a podcast by a pair of druids in Portland, Oregon. And I am technically hosting by myself today. Jonathan, unfortunately, is out of town tonight, so he wasn't able to jump in on this. But I do have the beautiful Spider Faerie Queen.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Now the whole world gets to know.
Oh dear.
As well as our special guest, Michael Dangler.
Hello, how are you?
Doing good.
Oh yeah.
Other than the fact that I ended up, my normal half-hour commute ended up taking around an hour and a half tonight, so I'm running a little bit on the jitters tonight, but that's good.
It's productive.
It's productive, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it's productive. How are you doing tonight, Michael?
I'm doing very well. Just hanging out in our shop, waiting for the time difference to catch up with us.
So we are here tonight. We're going to be talking about the ADF Dedicant Path. I know Jonathan and I have gone over a little bit of it in the past. It's basically our introductory course for ADF. And the reason I've asked Michael and Amber to be here is because Amber leads the Dedicant study group for the Grove, and Michael has literally written the book on the Dedicant Path.
He actually has written the book that I use.
So yes. By which I mean it's a study guide.
It is indeed. There is also Our Own Druidry, which is the main book for the Dedicant Path, and that is the official one that you receive when you join. So the Wheel of the Year, which is what I put together, is not the official book, but it is what a lot of people use.
It's a really good guide. You've broken it down by weeks with a little bit of homework assignment or a little bit of each of the Dedicant Path assignment to work on.
Yeah, when I went through the program, we didn't have anything quite like that, and that was, many years ago now, almost 15 years ago, that I went through it myself. And at the end of the program, I thought to myself, it'd be really nice if there was some kind of regular homework. The organization for the program wasn't quite as sophisticated as it is today, and it struck me as something that we could really benefit from having a little bit more organization around. So I figured if it would help me, it might help other people. So I sat down and I wrote out, I broke it out initially for Groves as like a weekly or a monthly thing, and then I updated it a little bit and set it out as more of a weekly thing for individuals after that, and that worked out remarkably well.
And Amber, like Amber mentioned, we use the Wheel of the Year book in our study group.
Mm-hmm. Well, we use both for sure.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about our study group is that we do meet once a month, and we have a conference call where everybody comes in. I present a PowerPoint, which is a lot of the main talking points and questions from the Wheel of the Year book by Michael Dangler. And so what we do is we go through, we discuss what the topic is. He lists it as weeks. So week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. But when we have people coming into our study group, they might come in technically, well, we're on week 30-something, and that's a little bit intimidating. So we've kind of gone away from the number system and have gone more with the topic that is for that numbered week. So if it is an assignment on a virtue, per se, then we would not call it, week number 23. We would just say, today we're going to focus on the virtue of hospitality. The ADF definition of hospitality is, and I don't have it memorized off the top of my head, unfortunately, and then we would talk about other types of definitions. We would bring up a lot of the questions that are presented in our own Druidry so that everybody can kind of listen to the questions, have a moment to reflect, and then I might share some commentary or some experience and then open it up so that everybody else can have their experiences shared, questions asked, that sort of thing. And we go through that all year long, and then once we're done with all of the assignments, we start back over. And we have been consistently starting over in March, so that's been pretty fun.
It's a good place for it. The numbering system was originally obviously designed because it was published in book format, and for someone who decides to just pick up a book and work solitary, because everything in ADF is really designed around not making the assumption that you'll be working with a grove. And so the week numbering made sense in that. But even when we do Dedicant study work here in our grove, we don't typically use the week numbering system. We tend to just say, okay, tonight we're going to talk about, hospitality, or we're going to talk about our last high day or the one that's coming up. And we don't use the number system either.
I will definitely say that when I went through it for myself, although it took me a little bit longer than the year to actually complete it, I think that I was working on it for a good solid 2 years. But I did go through it with the weekly thing on my own time. So we would go over it in the study group, and we would stop, kind of lose track of the numbers. But on my own, since I didn't, since we don't answer the essays together. We just provide good questions and get good ideas out so that when you're on your own, you can fill those out. And I know that when I did that, I definitely went through the numbering system because it just made more concrete sense to me.
We've kind of dived into the deep end here, as always tends to happen with me somehow. I always do this on the podcast. So let's back up a little bit and talk about the requirements for the Dedicant Path, about the assignments and, about what the assignments are.
So originally we had 9 requirements for the Dedicant Path, a good Druid number. We're up to 11 now. I think that we made that change either in 2003 or 2005. And we cover virtues, the high days. We review a couple of books because Druidry is religion with homework, so naturally you have to read books. We have students set up a home shrine of some sort where they can do a lot of their ritual work on their own. We have them doing meditation, including some 2 powers. There's some nature awareness work that gets done. And then we kind of describe our cosmos through the 3 kindreds as well, the gods, the ancestors, and the nature spirits. We make sure that the students are doing high day work, so they're not only understanding what the high days are, but they're getting practical experience with them, actually doing something for those high days. And we try and fit everything into a cultural practice, so that people are looking at their work not what's the word I'm looking for? Not generically, but rather specifically. And they may not settle on a hearth culture or a culture that they want to work with immediately, but they hopefully will find something that gives the work that they do at their altar some depth as well. And at the very end, usually at the end, sometimes it can move around, but usually we suggest people do at the end a Dedicant oath rite, where they make an oath to continue following that path. I've liked to describe the Dedicant Path not as something that you finish, but something that you start. which is why we no longer call it the Dedicant program. You don't finish the program. When you kind of complete this paperwork, that's where it marks you starting on the path of dedicated druidry.
I like that.
I do too.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it was called a path for a really long time, and the more we talked about it, or a program for a really long time, the more we talked about it as a program, the less we liked that phrasing, because it really did sound like something that you would finish and then never look at again. But I tend to encourage people to look at it again. I've done the Dedicant Path work more than once. My initial stuff is up on my website, and my new stuff is up on the website. I haven't done every requirement over again, but I go back and I review and I do it again, because it never hurts to go back over the basics.
Absolutely.
So.
I know personally I've went over your work quite a few times just for some good examples of how to write and understanding how the Dedicant Path has changed in requirements and such, because you do provide like your original entries and then the secondary ones. And I know that we've also linked yours and several other completed Dedicant Paths to our group, so that all of our members can get a little bit more examples in there and feel like, that they can have some variety in what they write, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I kind of like to refer back to yours too, just because when the guy who's literally, again, written the book has your entries are just they're very personal, and they're very I don't know, they're approachable, if that makes sense. Like I can look at your assignments and be like, okay, so when I'm over here feeling like I have to write like 5,000 words and then narrow it down from this epic, essay, that's not necessarily the case. It's okay to just write.
Yeah, I definitely struggled with writing concisely, and having really good, concise answers as reference tools. That was immensely important for me.
A lot of people have a lot of trouble condensing now. You either come at this in two ways. You either have trouble getting it small enough, or you have trouble getting it long enough. And for a lot of people, 125 words doesn't sound like a lot to describe hospitality, and it sounds like you could easily blow by that, but there are people who are really who's when they write, they are not that verbose. They get to the point and they get right to it, and 125 words sounds like a stretch. And usually when people say that to me, I say, well, if you need to increase your word count to reach the minimum, the minimums are there for a reason. We went back through and we rewrote things, and we double checked, and we said, no, this is really where you have to be to cover all of these things. What I usually tell people is take a look at it from another direction, expand a little bit on something, find something you're really passionate about and dive into that. Really show someone what it is that you feel about this virtue or this high day. And that has gone a long way for a lot of folks. But yeah, the condensing it down is usually the problem. Driving it down to under 3 times the limit of 125 words or whatever it is. And for people who have that problem, I tend to say, take a look at extra words that you probably don't need, try and outline your response. Take what you wrote, outline it, and then go back to what you originally had written and see if that helps you pull out things that you don't need. So there's a lot of little tricks that you can do, but as long as you're kind of staying on target and on the topic, and you don't blow past those high word marks, you should be okay. Your reviewer for sure will thank you if you can get it down to the minimum.
Yeah, I know one of the things that we say quite often in the Dedicant group is as we're using the Wheel of the Year book, I make the comment often, if you answer every single question presented in this book, you will go way over the word count.
Yeah.
And you will, yes.
Yeah, so don't attempt to answer every single question. Maybe pick a couple questions that call to you the most. Answer those, and if you're struggling with word count, that's a good way to work on it, is just pick a couple good questions and focus on those, in addition to the basic answer that you already have. But in most cases, we experience a lot more of the opposite problem of having very, very passionate writers in our group, and then having to take those really good, thought-provoking questions and to throw half of them away. It seems kind of painful. But that's why I tell everybody, write, journalize it, because it's still important. If you want to elaborate on that, that's an important thing and an important tool for you to keep in your toolbox.
You're not throwing
it
it
is
away.
absolutely important.
Yeah, you're not throwing it away. You still have it there to use for yourself, and that's important for you. It's just not quite so important for the people who are reviewing what you wrote.
Well, and then there's some other essays towards the end of the path, if you're working on it through the series throughout the book. All the big essays are towards the end, and when you have written a lot, there almost becomes too much information to even make those word requirements. But the reverse is also true, in that if you've written a lot, you know which things have stood out the most to you, so you're able to write those essays as well. It really comes down to the individual person and trying to make it the best that works for them. And I think that the Wheel of the Year book is fantastic for that, especially in giving a lot of good questions that I know that I had never thought of before, and kind of approaching virtues from different directions and everything. That was something that I wouldn't have probably done otherwise.
So, if I may, if you don't mind, Michael, I'd like to read an example of the kinds of questions that are asked.
Yeah.
So this would be for the ritual explanation, or the high day explanation, which is, I think, 125 words minimum.
Yep.
Explanations.
Yes. So here's the questions that are asked. Consider how it is celebrated in your hearth culture or across hearth cultures. Are there any myths that are celebrated in connection with this feast? If so, what are they and how do they fit in? What does this holiday or time of year mean to you? Do you look forward to it? Are there secular aspects of this holiday that mean a lot to you, or perhaps holdovers or memories of your childhood that you cherish? How do you know when this day arrives? Do you look at the calendar, or do you just know it has come? If you have children or wish to have children, what key traditions do you wish to pass down to them? What, if anything, is spiritual or religious to you about the high day or time of year, and how do you show that? Are there any traditions that your grove has for this high day? Finally, is there anything else about this holiday that you would like to add? And I know for myself, by the time I'm done answering all those questions, I've probably got about 1,000 words, at least.
The questions themselves go well over 125 words. So if you're going to answer them all, you're going to be well past it. So, and not everyone will answer all of those. There's questions, if you have children or if you plan to have children, what do you want to pass down? Not everyone wants to have kids. And so not everyone's going to answer that particular one. But the thing that I have learned doing this and doing all of the study programs in ADF that I have done is that there is a great deal of value to those additional journalings, and that when you go back and you review those questions, your answers to those questions 6 months later, 8 months later, when you go to write the essay that comes off of it, you think of things that, you think of new things, and you think of things that were really important to you, and you find things that really weren't that important to you, and you can sort of start to sift through all of that.
I like how different the virtues can take on those different types of questions. One of the things I see very, very often is for the virtue of wisdom. I see a lot of talking about a family member, a grandmother, a grandfather, a mother, a father, looking up to that individual and seeing them as wise, seeing something that they were to want to take from that experience with that person. But then I will see an essay or something on perseverance, and I'll see more of the I persevered when I was faced with this terrible thing. I lost a job, or I failed an assignment in school, or, you know, something worse, something a little bit different. And so, like, that will take a very different direction than the first. So, I mean, that's just kind of one basic example of how those different questions can fit a different virtue in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. The interesting thing about wisdom is that none of us ever wants to think of ourselves as wise, and so we usually look outside of ourselves for individuals that we, you know, for examples of wise individuals. And when we talk about perseverance or courage or things that we have direct experience in overcoming, we often talk about ourselves. It's one of those interesting things that some virtues are very outward looking, and some of that is the humility that many of us are brought up with, and some of them are very inward looking, and that sometimes comes from the self-reliance as a virtue that we sometimes get from our parents or our grandparents, and the ways that we interact with those types of virtues as a society as well.
So one of the fun parts of the Dedicant Path, that I say fun because I personally found it very fun, but it doesn't always present itself as fun to some of our members, is the book reviews. We have 3 main book reviews that you must do, and they are, one pertains to a particular hearth culture, one pertains to Indo-European studies, and then one pertains to mythology. So you have 3 different approaches to spirituality, and you're focusing more on scholarly works, things that are supported with facts, with history, not so much of the non-fact-based stuff. And so, like, we have a recommended reading list, and it's quite extensive. I know that there's probably a few titles that I would like to have considered, but I stuck with the list myself because it was a little bit easier. But the thing that gets challenging with the book reports that we have is that a lot of our members will start a book, and then it'll get too heavy, too dry. For whatever reason, it becomes problematic. And
Mallory.
J.P. Mallory is notorious as a game over.
I don't know if you've read my review of J.P. Mallory's book, but I didn't like it very much either. It was over my head. I didn't enjoy it. I'm terrible at Mid-East Russian steppe geography, which figures very heavily into where the Indo-Europeans were, and it was beyond me in many ways. So I stopped and I read Nigel Pennick and Prudence Jones' History of Pagan Europe. So.
That's where I went to.
I went to the Myth of Matriarchal Prehistory, which was a very fascinating read coming from a trans male perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, consider this my official warning to all you listeners. Just be cautious picking up J.P. Mallory. If you're not prepared to read an archaeological text, it's going to be a tough read.
It is.
Well,
it really is.
One of the very nice things, though, that I discovered with the book reviews is that you're looking at it. Sometimes the reading of the book can be the daunting thing, and then others can find, I have to write a report, which is a daunting thing. But the report is really only 325 words. So it's not the extensive review. It's almost the length of an average, like, Amazon review, I've kind of noticed. So reading through these books, picking a book that corresponds with the amount of review you have to write. If you start reading a book that you don't like and it's too much, realizing that you're only going to be writing a shorter book review and it's not worth to finish that book, no, pick up a different book. Pick up one that feels a little bit more worth your time and worth your words.
Absolutely. There is no shame in just stopping a book that you do not like. Feel free to do that. The other thing that I will recommend, you mentioned the 325-word minimum on that. It's hard to convince a person that you have read the entire book in 325 words. And we see people who will submit something and they'll talk about the first 3 chapters and maybe the last chapter. They won't cover the entire scope of the book. And what I have told people, because I trust our students to actually read stuff, so I'm not at all concerned about actually saying this out loud, but the way to convince a person that you've read the book is to pick a quote from the first 20 or 30 pages, pick a quote from the middle 20 or 30 pages, and pick a quote from the last 20 or 30 pages. Write about how that quote makes you feel, or, react to it in some way, and then tell us whether or not you think that the book is something that you would recommend to other people. And you should hit right about 325 words just responding to those quotes. The quotes don't count toward the word minimum, but the response to them, you could easily write 100 words in response to a quote that really moves you. So if you pick a quote from early in the book, the middle of the book, and the end of the book, you're going to be able to convince someone that you read it, and you're going to be able to cover the entire scope of the book more likely. If the book covers multiple hearth cultures, pick 2 or 3 hearth cultures from the middle. There's a lot of ways to go about it, but make sure that you're kind of covering each of those, because when your reviewer gets it, we don't have any idea if you've actually read the book. The only information they have is what's in front of them, what you wrote. So make sure that your list fully, your review fully covers everything.
I think one of the things that I really liked about yours, Michael, was when you did your review on Drawing Down the Moon, you broke it down by chapter, and I really liked that because when I was reading it, and I think that review was exceptionally long.
It was terrible. My reviewer was not happy with me. That was before we didn't have any word counts, and we didn't have any length requirements whatsoever. So we all bets were off. So.
Yep, I remember it being really long, but I loved reading it because that was also the book that I had chosen, and I liked reading your commentary because I already had some pretty solid ideas per chapter. And there were some chapters where I would agree with you and be like, well, I don't really necessarily need to add this bit in here because I think that, it doesn't provide anything new that they haven't possibly heard before. And it helped me condense things down, but I loved breaking it down by chapter like that, and I tried to take my favorite chapters and write something about them, my favorite chapters, and just kind of get rid of the ones that didn't affect me nearly as much.
Yeah, and that's a good plan, but like I said, when you do that, make sure you're getting a little bit from throughout the book so that your reviewer knows you read it all.
Yeah. So if your favorite chapters happen to be 1, 2, and the last one, then...
Yeah.
Throw something else in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk a little bit about, back up a little bit and talk about the journaling again. Because that's definitely one thing that I have noticed a lot, that I've heard a lot from through the Dedicant email group, and even a little bit on ICQ. For our listeners, there's a chat through ICQ every Tuesday night for ADFers to get together and talk about whatever, basically. But I've heard a lot of people just espouse the virtue of journaling.
I'm going to go ahead and jump in real quick, and let's go ahead and take a small musical break and get right back to the discussion.
Look into the water. and Gwydion fall to their knees, fall to their knees. Welcome the May Queen, sing for her now, for as the year turns to sour, she'll return as an owl. Blood I wear the owl. Stand alone in the tower, watch over your land, hear the call of a hunter, call him into your hands. He is dark, he is handsome, and the king is away. Granu says he must go now, but you ask him to stay. Ask him to stay. Welcome the May Queen, sing for her now, for as the year turns to sour, she'll return as an owl. Blood I wear the owl. She can't live without him, so while the king is away, they plot to kill him in a year and a day, with a foot on the cauldron, the goat holds him true, by a fast running river came the spear from Gronu, an eagle it flew. Welcome the May Queen, sing for her now, for as the year turns to sour, she'll return as an owl. Blood I wear the owl. My son, where are you? For only I see an old rotting eagle upon an oak tree. Oak that grows between two banks, darkened is the sky and hill. Shall I not know by the wounds that this is life? Oak that grows on upland ground, is it not wetted by the rain? Has it not been drenched by 90 tempests? It holds in its branches high flower fess. Come to me, young lion, and rest this night, for your wife is a bird now. return as an owl, blood eye with the owl.
Hi, I'm the Reverend Kirk Thomas, and you're listening to Part the Mist, a Druid podcast created and hosted by the members of Columbia ADF.
And I know myself, I've actually started keeping a nature journal because of the Wheel of the Year, not necessarily for my Dedicant Path stuff, but just because I've read a lot about the advantages of the nature journal and just felt very deeply about needing to kind of have that for myself. I cannot emphasize the importance of journaling enough.
I think
It
that
is.
one of the things that really came out to me with the Dedicant Path was, yes, journaling is stressed. And it is stressed because it allows you to get your thoughts on paper and to come back to them. So that you can dissect those, you can reflect on those, you can put those into your essays. But more than that is focusing on possibly keeping more than one journal, keeping a meditation journal, because that is a special mental place for you to keep separate than your Druid assignment, nature journals, or something like that. Keeping a journal for meditations, keeping a journal for nature awareness, keeping a journal for dreams, keeping a journal for various different types of things. Now, you don't have to keep a billion different journals, but the Dedicant Path really does, if you start keeping that journal, it does help you feel like that's a super amazing tool that you can use consistently to get your thoughts collected and on the right path. And that's kind of what the Dedicant Path really is about, is getting your footings, making a path, understanding the things you think. And that's where journaling really comes in. You're figuring out the things you think.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you don't like journaling, you may not like the rest of our study programs either. But it's one of those things where you can never journal enough. If you're looking to respond to writing prompts and things like that, it's really the way to go. And any magician worth their salt is going to go back and look at what worked and what didn't work. A bard who does not write down their inspiration or find a way to keep it, whether it is in audio notes or whatever, is going to find a hard time producing from that inspiration or finding it again. It's important to find a way to journal that matches you. If it is taking audio notes, that works out too. You can always go back and transcribe. If it's writing, by hand in a nice leather-bound journal, do that. If it's writing on your computer, do that. When I journal, we do clergy work every month, and my co-priest Jan Avenda and I get together and we hang out and we do our clergy journey work, and then at the end of it, we both pick up our phones and we type like mad into our notes app on our iPhones, and that's how we journal that stuff. It's really important, I think, to make sure that whatever you choose to journal, you do it, and that the journaling method fits you as well.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned the audio, and like vlogging and stuff too, video blogging or whatever, like whatever works, because I know it can be daunting to kind of look at this and realize, if you're not a big writer, to realize there's these assignments that you have to do, that you have to sit down and you have to write on. But I do, this is not school, this is not college, this is not high school, this is your own personal spiritual path, and you got to do what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I think it's always kind of nice. Whenever we do a high day at Columbia Grove, I will generally get at least one person come up to me and make a comment, because when I introduce myself, I'll say, like, my name is Amber, I'm a member of Columbia Grove, and I'm the leader of the Dedicant Study Group for our Grove, aka we sometimes call it the Nerd Club. And then I'll have somebody come up to me and be like, so I really like this idea of studying, and I don't get a lot of spiritual opportunities to really focus and learn and study. And then they'll say something like, well, I'm kind of a nerd, and I would really like to be part of a nerd club.
It's all about branding.
Yep, exactly. Know your audience sometimes, I suppose. It does help in the Pacific Northwest over here. We do have a lot of very interested, spiritual, for lack of a better word, nerds. Some that like to be called nerds, others that just like to be scholarly. And so yeah, we'll get people attracted to the scholarly work that ADF does present through the Dedicant Path. And I think that it's one of those things that ADF offers that people are drawn to. This is what they would like to do to flesh out their spirituality, to define and grow and learn what their path is.
And I'd like to take a minute to point out here too that it doesn't. I mean, like Michael mentioned earlier, you're starting a path here, which is to say, the nerd group does not end with the Dedicant Path.
No.
There's and we've mentioned it before on the podcast. There's so many other ways to go. There's a clergy path. There's the initiate, and half a dozen special interest groups, all with their own study groups and assignments and certifications.
I had a friend, when I said that I completed the Dedicant Path, she said, so you're a priest now, right? And I laughed, and I'm like, no, that's not how ADF works. There's programs, and then there's higher programs, and then there's higher. It's based on study.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not just you do this one thing, and after a year, you're at the top of the ladder. No, there's a lot more to learn. There's a lot more to experience. And I love that about ADF, is that it does provide all these different programs where that you can branch out and you can grow like a tree on the branch that you want to be on.
And
Absolutely.
you can take as long as you need.
You can. I mean, it took me 2 years to finish the Dedicant Path work when I started. I only had 9 questions to do. It took me 2 years to do it. It's supposed to be doable in a year. It took me a further... Let's see, I was in ADF for 5 years before I was ordained, studying the whole time and partially writing a program during that time. And then it took me 9 years all told to get through to the very end of the clergy training program and become a senior priest. So there's plenty of time. You could technically do it in, 5 years. It took me 9. So if you're doing it faster than me, you're definitely overachieving, I think. And I actually had a conversation today with someone who's not an ADF member. They contacted me via Tumblr, of all places. And she asked me, why do you have different levels of priest and different levels of study program if, everyone who's ordained can do the same things that everyone else who's ordained can do regardless of level? And I said, well, a lot of our study program work is about being self-driven, and it's about rewarding that process of being self-driven. We recognize that people gain additional training beyond where they start, and that's an important thing to us. Whether it brings you prestige or glory or whatever it is, titles, those things don't matter, but we like to recognize people for the work that they do anyway, and that's why we have those circles, and that's why we have recognition of the completion of that work.
So Amber mentioned something a minute ago about how she finished her Dedicant Path.
It hasn't been approved yet.
No. But I
Not
wonder
officially.
if you would like to share a little bit of your experience with your...
Sure. Well, like was just said, I have completed my Dedicant Path. I've submitted it for review, and now my reviewer gets to have the fun job of reading the, I think it's 62 pages of text that I have written. I'm sorry. But I'm very proud of it, though. So the process is like, now that it's been submitted, I will either hear eventually, soon-ish, I suppose, when it is either accepted or needs to have some revisions done to it. Either of which I'm perfectly fine with. So I'm counting it as, like, at this point in time, I have completed all that I can do. Now it's just kind of a waiting game. Kind of like Michael Dangler, I took 2 years to do mine as well. And that is a little bit of it was originally kind of a sore spot for me because I was leading the Dedicant Path group for Columbia Grove, but what it really came down to was as Columbia Grove was growing, that first year that we started the Dedicant Path, it was growing and it was becoming something very amazing, but we had so many things going on from so many different directions, and my job was more to do the work, not to write about it all the time, because as much as I wanted to write, I just didn't have the time to, because I was doing it. I was working with the community. I was working with our members. I was helping build programs and stuff that we had in our area, and so I wasn't able to always sit down with pen and paper or with my my keyboard, not typewriter. I don't type on a typewriter anymore.
That would be awesome, though.
The Dedicant Path kind of fell a little bit to the wayside in terms of getting those assignments completed. But by still doing the study group that we do every single month, I was still getting the comments. I was still getting the good feedback and the good questions presented, and we were still going over all these topics. So when I did find those moments to actually take the time to work on it, I knew what to expect. I knew what needed to be done, and so I was kind of able to breeze through a lot of those assignments. So it took me 2 years to do it, but once I really sat down to do it, it took me a year. So, the second year, once Columbia became a little bit more, I would say a little more self-sufficient, and I went back to school, I was kind of allowing myself to pull a little bit more of my time and resources into finishing the Dedicant Path because that became very important to me, and the Grove didn't need as much as my time and effort at that point. So I did these assignments alongside of presenting these really good weekly assignments with our group. And it was fun because in the Dedicant Path group that we have for our group, everybody's on different weeks. Some people are on week 3, or some people are on week 7, or some people are on the very, very end. But we got rid of all those numbers because it became too much. So every time we went through a topic, if someone had completed that topic, we could talk about what they had just done, or we can kind of brag about the fact that, oh, I just did that one, or something like that, and get good support from each other. And towards the end of my path, it became really amazing because as I'm leading this group, every single assignment that's coming up, I can provide commentary. Every single assignment that comes up, I can give good feedback about this is how I approached this question, and this is that. And that was really that last year of taking the year to kind of go through all of the requirements was really what that first year was for me. But the second year was actually sitting down and writing everything down and really, really experiencing the internal aspects of all the work that I had done the year previous. So I kind of felt like I jumped in the pool before I really learned how to swim. But doing both being an active member of the Grove and being a little bit more of an internal study nut have been really beneficial for me.
You learn a lot about the things that you teach as well. It takes a lot more preparation to lead a study group than it does to actually finish the program, I tend to think. And so if there are any Grove organizers out there listening to this or whatever, just know that the work that one puts into organizing a study group and making it work is as valuable both to you and to ADF and to paganism as a whole, I think, as just finishing the paperwork. So don't at all get disheartened by the fact that maybe you haven't gotten yours done because you're helping others get theirs done. You're learning a lot in that process.
And speaking for myself, as recently elected senior druid who is on his 3rd year of the Dedicant Path, I mean, I've definitely, my last 2 years with the Grove, like Amber was saying, I've done the work. Like, I've been here doing this with the Grove and helping the Grove grow and flourish and using the virtues to do so, and, you know, learning about each of the high days in order to help write rituals for them. And I've done the work. Now it's just a matter of I have to carve out the time to sit down and write the assignments.
I once heard it told that in order for you to truly understand something, be able to teach it. And
Yes.
I definitely feel like that is something that is so true for myself, where I can do something and I can prove that I can do it in my own mind, but if I can prove it to somebody else, then I'm really picking my words carefully. I'm really reflecting. I'm really actually understanding why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I got to feel comfortable enough talking about it, because otherwise, if I don't know what I'm talking about, then it's just gibberish. So if you're able to teach while learning at the same time, then you're really retaining a lot in that respect. And for Arin, being on your 3rd year, there's nothing wrong with that, because you've been with the Dedicant Path since we started it with Columbia Grove. Arin has gone through all of these topics and provided commentary, all of these topics twice now, and we're about to start in with probably a whole new group of people, because we've had people come in and they've lasted for a few months and then they've decided they wanted to move on to something else, or they would like to go more solitary, or the meeting times didn't work for them.
Or they just don't have the time for the Dedicant Path right now.
Exactly. We've had people come in, we've had people go out, we've had some people like Arin who's been around for all of it. I think in 2 years you've missed maybe 2.
One.
It's
okay.
about to be 2. You've almost got me beat. But, and I see that. I see that from a lot of our members where they haven't completed the path, or they might still be at the very beginning, but they get a lot of value out of coming in and getting their thoughts out on paper, maybe, or not on paper, but getting their thoughts out around other people, so that eventually they'll get them down on paper. And it'll just come at the time that feels more convenient and comfortable for them.
All right. Well, I think that's kind of a good place to start wrapping things up. Amber, if there's anybody that might be interested in getting involved in our study group or reaching out to you to talk about starting up a study group, how would you like them to reach out to you?
The best way to reach out would be to email the Grove. What is it?
ColumbiaADF@gmail.com.
Yep.
Or if you email ptmpod@gmail.com, that'll also get forwarded on.
Yep, because everything gets forwarded to me, and every Dedicant interested person gets their email sent to me. I have a email that I'll send back out that details what we do, how we do it, what day of the week we have our meetings, what the requirements are. And the requirements is you need to be an ADF member. It's being an ADF member that gives you the resources that we need to use for our Dedicant group. And so having individuals understand that this is an ADF path. This isn't just a spiritual path. We have an organization. We have a fellowship that we follow with. And so getting that understood, getting all of those really basic original questions answered, I try to take care of that before we really dive into anything. But all questions are always welcome, whether you have a question about joining our Dedicant group or starting up your own or anything of that nature. I'm totally willing to help out and give any feedback that I possibly can.
And just to re-clarify, you do need to be a member of ADF. in order to follow, just because that's where the materials come from, more or less.
Well, and it is an ADF program.
It is an ADF program, yes.
Path.
Yes. And Michael, how can folks reach out to you?
Well, the best ways to reach out to me are really Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, all of those things. I tend to my username across just about everything is Chronarchy, and my website is chronarchy.com, chronarchy. And so you'll find me at chronarchy.tumblr.com. You'll find me at facebook.com/chronarchy. You'll find me at Twitter under the handle of Chronarchy. Any of those ways, if you want to shoot me an email or drop me a line, email at this particular date is the least reliable only because my computer died a couple of days ago, which serves as a perfect opportunity to tell anyone who's listening to this and doing the Dedicant program to back your stuff up right now, because it is never a bad day to do it, so go do it as you're listening to this. Yeah, feel free to drop me a line. I'm happy to chat with anybody on any of this stuff. Please, especially, I'll say this broadly in ADF, don't ever feel like you can't reach out to someone from the Archdruid on down. We're all willing to chat with people. We're all open to someone shooting us a note out of the blue and saying, hey, can you help me with this thing?
Hey, can you be on my podcast?
Exactly. These things are easy for us to do. One other thing, though, that I want to mention that is really worth mentioning in the context of the DP and the rest of the ADF study programs. There was mention of, Amber, you've completed but not had yours approved yet, right?
Yes.
And it might come back for revisions. What I want to say about that is that revisions are usual and expected on these things. Almost everything that I submitted, and I wrote these programs, remember, I didn't write the DP myself, but I had a hand in that one, and I wrote most of the Quadri training program. Almost everything that I submitted came back with revisions. It is normal and usual, and I would hate for anyone to feel like that is something that they should be afraid of, because what you'll get back are suggestions for how to improve it and ways to think about things in a different way, and to make sure that you've answered the questions as asked. It's not at all about rejecting your spirituality or anything like that. It's just trying to make sure that you've answered the question fully and completely, and that you've thought about things in ways that make a difference. You're not going to get anything returned for spelling errors or things like that, unless it makes it unclear. So I just want to make that also very clear, that if it does come back, it's normal. It's expected. It's cool. Don't worry about it.
That's something that I've actually focused a lot about, is when I tell people, I'm like, I've completed it. Now I just have to wait for it to be accepted, or I need to make revisions. And the second I say that, not so much myself, but other people will be like, wait, it might not be approved. Like, you're like this colossal nerd. Why would you fail this? And I've had to explain and be like, no, it's not about failing. It's about maybe I didn't answer the question well enough, or maybe I didn't touch on maybe I missed the point somewhere. I mean, it happens. We get all caught up in writing that maybe we missed a key detail that might have been super important. So revision, I mean, it's not a death sentence.
Yep,
and
not
for
even
myself, for myself, I know that it's a learning tool in itself. So
I know it might be you, Michael, but I know somebody had actually put like the letter that they received, basically saying, hey, here's things that you need to revise. They put it up with their Dedicant Path stuff as well as like their responses.
Yeah, I think that I did that. I think I did.
I believe you did. I believe that was yours, yeah. But yeah, it definitely happens.
Yeah, I have a working blog, a working blog right now, and I'll update it once everything gets approved with all of the revisions and stuff too, because I think that that's important. I think that's a really important tool. And yeah, I did remember that was Michael's blog that did it. Because again, it's one of those things that made me feel really good and really comfortable with the fact that, it's not abnormal. It's not, it's not a death sentence. It's just this is a learning experience. Like, let's keep learning.
And I'd like to point out to the listeners, too, that Michael's Grove, 3 Cranes.
Yep.
Yes.
3 Cranes Grove, ADF.
3 Cranes Grove. If you look them up on Facebook, check them out. There's a great resource. They put up a lot of ritual ideas and a lot. Words are failing me because I've been at work all day and I haven't eaten yet, but just rest assured, you should really go check out 3 Crane Grove. They are a really great resource for just everything.
We take a lot of inspiration from 3 Cranes because you guys have a very public face and you do a lot of good work. You do a lot, you guys are posting a lot of rituals, you're posting a lot of, you guys have a songbook, you guys are doing things all the time, and you come up on our Facebook page all the time, and we see new ways that we could be making a bigger impact or reaching out to our community or all of these things, and we're inspired quite a bit by 3 Cranes Grove. So yes, by all means, please check them out because Columbia Grove does all the time.
If it helps at all, Columbia is also inspirational in your own ways. The podcast, ADF hasn't had a podcast in years, and it's lovely that Grove has a podcast now that can reflect positively on ADF. So it's all good stuff. We're all doing the good work. I recommend that we look at every Grove that we possibly can everywhere, but Columbia is definitely one that is certainly doing a lot of good stuff too. So.
Thank you so much. And don't you also have a shop out there, Michael?
I do. I'm sitting in it right now because it's quieter than my house. But Seamus, my partner in this, and I were driving back from an ADF festival one day, and we said, "Oh, hey, we could create ourselves a little store," and we did. And now we take it to various festivals, and you'll see some of our stuff floating about on people's altars here and there. But the shop's name is the Magical Druid. We have a physical shop. We do custom work, and you can find us at magicaldruid.com. Or at your nearest festival for the most part. We don't make it out to the West Coast as much as we'd like to. We have made it out there from time to time. But certainly anywhere East and Midwest, we tend to try and make it to those festivals where we can. I'll be at Trillium this year. I'll be at Wellspring. And I'll be at Midnight Flame for sure. So, and Convocation in 3 weeks.
I know if you did make it out here, I'd be in trouble.
You're already in trouble.
I made it out to 8 Winds a couple of years ago. I'd like to go back. I'd like to go between the gates. I just haven't managed it yet. Or Beyond the Gates. Beyond the Gates?
Beyond the Gates.
Beyond the Gates, yes. Your festival.
So a little fun fact, as I have just completed my Dedicant Path, I wanted to have a token blessed by the omens from the 3 kindreds, and I was not quite sure what kind of a token I wanted to have blessed, but I knew that I wanted it to be something natural, but something with meaning, and so I actually commissioned a token from the Magical Druid that had the ADF tree sigil on it that says Dedicant Path completed. So I have like this little altar token piece that was created for me. And Columbia we actually have quite a few plaques from the Magical Druid.
Yeah, we have our little table where we sell some of the Magical Druid plaques. So if you're in the area and you're going, oh, well, I want to check out with this stuff in person, you can come by and check it out. But I recommend checking out the Magical Druid website, too, because they've definitely got a lot more selection there.
Yeah, the plaques that that we have are deity plaques. So they will have individual deities from different hearth cultures represented on each one of these plaques, and they become, I mean, really amazing little altar tools that, you have this plaque, and we sell quite a few of them actually on our high days, especially the ones that are specific to the culture that we represent for our high days as well.
I think quite a few of the members have at least one on each of their altars.
I love to browse Tumblr and find some altar from a person I've never met that has some of my stuff on it. It's pretty awesome.
I bet.
And I will say that a lot of people, I generally work our welcoming table for all of our high day events, and that puts me right next to the plaque selling area. And when I talk about it, they're like, yeah, this is ran by an ADF druid in Ohio, I believe, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And then when I talk about the magical druid, and nearly all of them have stamped in the back the magical druid. Not all of them do, but the ones that don't, I give them a little card that has your information on them so that they know and can check you out, because I think that it's really important to, A, support a druid organization, but also a small business and all of that fun stuff.
Yeah, we're really terrible about the branding piece. We try and remember to put it on the back of everything, and we fail miserably. We get so excited we made something cool, and then we forget. We just started working in pewter now, so, there's all sorts of fun stuff that we're doing.
Ooh. I think the most
There
amazing...
goes Amber's wallet.
Yeah. Nope, it's true. One of the most amazing things that you guys put out, and I think it was last year, maybe, that you put it out, but it was this beautiful box that is a Brigid portable altar plaque box that is just amazing. It's gorgeous. It has, not only does it have a statue, a flatback statue icon in the back of this box, but the box is also engraved in the front with a Brigid cross and has scroll work all around it, and there's just beautiful details throughout the entire thing, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. We had it on our altar for Emilk, and I had like 3 people ask where I got it and how they could get one.
I have one in the shop. I have one left right now in the shop.
Well, I think we got to wrap things up here. Anybody got any last words?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the invitation, and like I said, you guys are doing a great job in providing the work of our druidry out to the folk, and I appreciate that very much.
Thank you so much, Michael. That means a lot to hear, and thank you for coming onto the podcast. I know you've probably been on my personal wish list for a while, so it's good to finally get the excuse to get you on.
One of these days, I'll make it back out there, and we get to sit down when my kids have grown up a little bit more, and things are a little less hectic around my life. But yeah, I would love to come back out and meet more people than I got to meet last time I was out, which was now about 3 years ago. So
sounds good to me. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I do my wrap-up stuff real fast. You can find us on ptmpod.libsyn.com. Look us up, Part the Mist Podcast, on iTunes and Stitcher, and email us at ptmpod@gmail.com. I just received actually, as I was standing in the rain waiting for my train to come pick me up, I just received an absolutely beautiful, heartfelt piece of fan mail. I love hearing from you guys. I love it when you write in. Even if you don't necessarily have good things to say, I love criticisms. I am, after all, an ADF druid, and I'm here to learn. But yeah, keep writing. Keep letting us know what you enjoy, and check us out on Facebook. We've got the fan page and the group discussion. So, yeah, keep coming around, and we might be getting these podcasts out a little bit less than, or a little bit off schedule from here on out, just because Jonathan's working the full-time and I'm working the full-time, so we got to wrangle schedules around with each other.
So what you're saying is people should donate and help.
It doesn't hurt.
Well, we don't have anything set up for that, but if you wanted to donate, you could send some to our PayPal, and that would absolutely go towards the podcast and keeping that going, and that would be columbiaadf@gmail.com. So, yeah, that's wrapping it up for us, and look forward to talking to you guys again next month. Take care, everyone.
Well, thank you, Arin, Spider, and Michael Dangler for providing such awesome discussion in this month's episode. And now I am pleased to announce and play our latest addition to the show from the archives, read by Reverend Kirk Thomas.
This is Kirk Thomas, and From the Archives. This particular article is from the Oak Leaves Beltane 2000, issue number 14, and it's called Learning from the Trees by Judith Anderson Morris, also known as Toady. What's a druid without trees? For that matter, what's a world without trees? Yet most of us take trees for granted. When I was teaching honors and advanced placement English to gifted high school students, I gave the same assignment at the beginning of each school year. Go out tonight, I would instruct them, and hug a tree. Then write about your experience. Well, my students were, of course, incredulous. This woman is nuts. Hug a tree? What's that have to do with learning English? But being the obedient little honors students that they were, everyone always completed her assignment. The next day, each student would read his journal entries aloud. Some were incredibly funny, usually written by self-conscious He-Man athletic types who reported having crept about in the wee hours of the morning so as not to actually be seen doing this dirty deed. But always, without exception, the students were amazed at what they felt. While they were aware that trees are alive, their awareness rested at some abstract intellectual level. Once they touched the living thing in its essence, they understood the meaning of the word alive in all its nuances. For most of us, awareness is a touch, or a hug, if you will, away. I know of no other interaction that so immediately and intensely renders us aware of the life around us. So go hug a tree and write about your experience. Once you have completed the exercise, repeat it with another kind of tree. Was there a difference? In Charleston, we have a 1,000-year-old live oak, which natives call angel oak. The breadth and sheer power of this tree, protected in a city park, is incomparable. Each time I have visited and sat at its base, my back against its broad trunk, my feet on the humped stool of an exposed root, I am given what I call my affirmations, little signs that reaffirm for me the magic of the universe and my part in it. Sometimes it comes in the form of a visiting hawk, sometimes a horde of butterflies. Sometimes I find unique feathers at its base. It provides acorns, moss, and ferns for my spell work and, of course, a deep sense of peace. I always leave 3 shiny copper pennies in its hollows in return. The crepe myrtles that adorn the city streets, on the other hand, are quieter trees. They stand like shy and beautiful women as I stroke their smooth, shiny, twisted trunks. Willows are sad trees whose song is a wistful whoosh in the wind. Birches emote a sense of freshness and possibility. The tree has long been symbolic of life, but I also like to draw the analogy of the tree to the human brain. Everything in the universe exists in macrocosmic and microcosmic forms. The solar system is mirrored by the atom, a factory by a colony of ants. So too are the branching dendrites of our brains, which spread from each neuron like the branches of a tree. Dendrites pass information quickly from one neuron to the next, processing at an amazing rate. The better one takes care of a tree, the more branches it produces. The more one uses her brain, the more dendrites are produced. The more dendrites one possesses, the better one's potential for intellectual accomplishment. When Albert Einstein died and left his brain to be analyzed, the only real difference between it and the brains of other humans was in the amazing amount of dendrites Einstein possessed. Science has told us what the trees have always known. that proper use strengthens and enhances.
Wise one,
Brave one,
sure one,
strong one, we bid you now hail and farewell. Go by the powers that brought you, go by the unweaving spell. As thy bright pentagram stayed, depart ere the circle is gone.